All right, in this lesson here, what we're going to be doing is taking a look at how we would go about duplicating objects. It's actually quite a simple process. Let's go ahead and start out by, I don't know, let's create a cylinder, something a little bit more exciting this time around.
You mean we're not making a sphere?
Well, you can pretend that's one.
Okay.
There we go. So we've made this nice, incredible object, and how do we go about duplicating it? Well, all we need to do is basically come up here and select the transform tool, hold Shift down on the keyboard, and transform the object. Isn't that magical? Okay.
Wow.
So I'm just holding Shift. I transform this over to the side, and when I let go, I'm presented with a Clone Options dialog box. And this dialog box is basically asking me, all right, how do we want this new object to basically represent itself? Do you want it to be just a copy? Do you want it to have some sort of connection? Do you want it to be an instance? Do you want it to be a reference? Also, how many copies would you like, as well as the name?
Wow.
So let's see. Let's start out with a copy. So I'll go ahead and tell it OK. And at this point, if I was to go back to the original object and start doing any sort of modifications, which for doing this, I'll simply come up here to the Modify panel, and then I can come down here and start performing modifications, such as change the radius. So you'll notice that this object, while it's being modified, is not affecting this object whatsoever.
So when you make a copy, the two shapes are independent of each other.
That's right. He's just his own guy now. Come over here. He's got his own radius. So we can adjust that. There's absolutely no problem whatsoever. Okay? So let's go ahead and kill him out. Select the object. And again, I'll hold Shift and go ahead and move him over to the side. Again, present it with the same Clone Options dialog. This time what I want to do is come down and take a look at creating an instance. Now what an instance is going to do is form a two-way connection between the two objects. You can kind of think of it as really being the exact same object. It's just you're seeing it twice in the viewport. Okay. So I'll come down here. I'll tell it instance. Go ahead and click OK. And check this out. Come back, select my first object. And if I want to, let's say, adjust my radius. Oh, they're both adjusting. Or my height. Both adjusting. If I needed to quickly come in and make a scene full of droids that all look absolutely identical, and set myself up in such a position that my director or supervisor can come back in and say, you know, Buzz, I don't like that. Make this modification. I would be able to easily make that modification to any object, and they would all immediately change. Okay. But this does bring up an interesting question, and that is, do they still somewhat carry their own identity other than just transformation? Well, I can come over here and open up the material editor, which is something that's going to be covered later. But if I wanted to, I could make one material, let's say just a quick red material, and one material that's, say, a quick blue material, like such. And we'll just drag the red one down. We'll drag the blue one down. And you'll notice that I can still give them their own look altogether.
Okay.
Another thing that comes to mind would be, well, what about animation? If I turn Auto key on and move this guy over, and let's say by frame 20 he's back over here, and perhaps at 10 he's up in the air, notice the other guy is not moving. Okay?
Oh, so basic transformations don't have any effect.
So come over here to this guy and do the same thing. Perhaps move him over like such, and then up in the air like such. And now we've got, this little thing going on right here. Okay,
Very cool.
But they do still share this connection. Okay, in other words, if I wanted to do another modification, it doesn't matter who I select. Let's select this guy, and I'm going to put an actual modifier on the stack to actually modify this guy. Let's come down here, and I'll just hit B to jump down to bend. So I'm going to put a bend modification, and then come in here and adjust the bend, and whoa. Look at that. So even modifications, okay, that's applied, either one with an instance clone type is going to make both objects basically behave the same.
Very cool.
So with that, they still have their animation. So let's go ahead. We'll be talking more about the modifier stack in this VTM. So with that, let's just, let's see, what else? Well, actually, let's just go ahead and delete this off. That'll work. Come back to here. Now, another type, well, let's see, actually one more thing that we can point out real quick before we go to the reference. Let's delete that, select this guy with animation, and then shift drag him over and say instance. Guess what? He's got that same animation. As a matter of fact, if we grab him, shift drag him over, and just make him as a copy, he's also got that animation. And not just the animation, but the material as well.
I gotcha.
Okay, so let's delete that off, and let's talk about a potential problem. Well, what if, let's say we had our supervisor come back in and say, you know, Buzz, that's looking pretty good, and I'm glad you're able to make everything change so quickly. Give them a bigger head and extend the length of their arms. But now I want that guy over there to have his left arm shorter, and I want that guy back over there. Well, he's been involved in quite a few battles in the past, so we need to make some dents in his chest, and let's mess his back up. And he's got an older model head. And this guy over here, so now suddenly they all take a basic shape, but we end up in a situation where we need to go in and individually modify some of them independently.
We need variation.
That's right. And this brings us up to the final clone option type, which is the reference. And with the reference, what's going to happen? Well, basically, let me go ahead and start out by selecting these guys down here, and we'll just delete them, so now we have no animation. Now, I'm going to shift, drag over, and make it a reference. With a reference, we end up with basically a one-way route for communications.
Okay.
Anything modified on the original guy will be sent down to this guy. But this guy down here, let's go ahead and come back in here and apply his own color to him, okay, like such. If I put a modifier on him now, go ahead and hit B, we'll put a bend on it, we'll adjust the angle so he's nice and bent over. First guy did not bend. Okay, there's no animation. Let's go ahead and come back to the first guy and adjust his radius.
Oh, I see how this works.
So the adjustments made to the first guy is then sent to the second guy. Let's perhaps put a twist on this guy here. So we'll jump on down there. There's twist. And look at this. Interesting. And if I come up here and start adjusting the twist angle,
oh, wow.
look at this guy over here. So he's respecting the twist. Then after the twist, then he has his own modification, which is the bend. So he's bent over. So this puts us in a situation now where I can come back and have a supervisor come back to me and say, okay, Buzz, things are looking pretty good, but all of the robots need to have larger chest plates. Okay, not a problem. I go back to my original object. I make that adjustment. All robots now have it. Then I need to go make specific adjustments, and I can go back to that particular robot or object and make the modifications needed and it not affect everybody else.
So it's kind of like a hierarchy for data.
Yeah.
Cool.
Kind of look like it like that. So, I mean, that's really it for duplicating objects. It's very simple. Now, we do have means to some other tools. Well, actually, before we really get too far away, let's take a look at one last thing. If I was to duplicate this guy over just a little bit like such, and let's make them all instances. We'll come in here to number of copies, and perhaps I want to make 4 copies. Click OK. You'll notice we now have 4 copies, and what happened is the transformation that we had applied to the original copy was then put forth on all of the other copies as well.
And now, since that's an instance, we can go through and change any one of those, and it will in turn change all of
Pick
them.
on the middle guy. Look at that.
Very cool.
So, yeah, absolutely. We'll come back over here to cylinder, make it a little bit. Actually, no, let's change the height, change the radius a little bit. There we go. Something kind of on the bizarre side.
A little.
Yeah, whatever. So, anyways, you get the point. So one other thing that I want to go ahead and show is another duplication tool that is available that has a lot of very powerful feature, and that's the array tool. So let's go ahead and come back over here to create, and I don't know, let's create a torus perhaps. So I'll make a little torus like such. Yeah, maybe like that. And if I was to shift move him over, say, so about 77 units. I'm actually looking down here right now. So somewhere about, 70-ish units or so. So let's go ahead and cancel that. Now watch this. And I'm moving in X as well. I come up here to Tools. I can come down here to Array.
Ooh, lots of stuff.
Yes, a lot of different things in here. And I'm not going to cover everything. I'm just going to talk right now about nice, simple, incremental numbers. I'm going to... Let's say I want to duplicate this, and I'm going to move him, say, 77 units in X, and I want to rotate him, say, 90 degrees each time I do it.
Okay.
I'm going to make 10 copies, so I can adjust that to more or less, whatever. So what's going to happen is each one's going to be duplicated, moved over. Its type is going to be a copy. If I need an instance or reference, I can do that. In fact, let's just go ahead and go to instance. And then it'll just be moved over 10 and rotated 90 degrees. So this right here actually ends up giving us what's going to look like a little chain.
Oh, very cool.
And since they are indeed an instance, I can now simply come back in here, go over to the modifier panel, and start making adjustments if I wanted to. Like, say, maybe I want to bring down my number of sides, something really low res there. And let's say bring my segments way down, something very low res. So there you go. Little quick chain.
Very cool.
Okay? and move my... I'm just kidding. Okay.
We get the idea.
We get the idea. So that's really all I wanted to talk about in regards to duplicating objects. Basically, it's just a simple shift and transform. So in other words, it doesn't have to just be move or translate. It can also be shift, rotate. In other words, I can come to this guy over here, grab my rotate tool, and then let's just kind of rotate this around, and then hold shift and simply drag. And look at that, I'm dragging out another copy. And let's drag it out just a little bit, maybe something like that. And let's just come in here and say we're going to make 8 copies. And look at that little mess we've just created.
That is a mess.
Okay.
Cool looking, but a mess.
Yeah, but you get the idea.
Oh, yeah.
So quick Control Z fixes that right up without any problem. And scale, same thing. So shift, transform, or you could go in and you can use the array tool, which is found up under tools, and you can do all sorts of neat things.
Cool.
And so with that, that's going to pretty much wrap up this lesson. Thanks, everyone.